Remember when I said we find out that the folks controlling everything in Excellence were evil white men? Well... Well, it had to happen. Excellence is no longer excellent. Like I said, it turns out that evil white men control the Aegis, and either only gave black people magic powers, or the black people already had them, and somehow the evil white men managed to control all of them, all to use them for their own selfish desires. And no, this ain't a graphic I created for the video. This is from the last issue. Good old America is evil propaganda. Oh, it gets worse than that. But let's catch up because it's been a while since this book came out. There was a 6-month break for some reason, and then the Wu flu hit, so the book got delayed again, but eventually issue 7 came out in June. The story picks up 6 months after the last issue, with Spencer still looking like a 30-year-old plodding away. He finally settled on the idea of overthrowing the Aegis, this governing body controlling all the magic, which can only be used by black people. He's being watched and he knows it, so he creates 3 copies of himself to go talk to his mother, grandmother, and friend Darien. He's also become powerful enough to detect that people are watching him, especially one Mr. Daquan Hill. Badass nigga Hill, look at him. You know he's the shit and he does too. So he's confident that he's got the real Spencer locked down and he's just biding his time to get dirt on him to finally take him down. Issue 7 is mostly about Spencer talking with his mother, grandmother, and Darien. With his mom, we find out that she's had her magic taken from her and she's locked down in the house. We also get a little bit of a hint that she and his father also thought about overthrowing the system. This has been hinted at throughout the series, with the older characters trying to get it across to Spencer that everything he's trying to do has been done before. He even thinks this, figuring that they've just given up and decided to punish anyone who hasn't done the same. Then he visits Darien and we see just how jacked up things can get. The powers that be have put a spell on Darien's apartment, making it look nice at first glance, but under the spell we really see what it looks like. We also see that the spell affects Darien's mother as well. The way she's drawn makes me think she's based on a real person because the design is so particular, but then we see what she really looks like and it's horrible. It's also not clear what happened here. This is really the first time in the series where there's something clearly missing from the story, and then we get a scene that makes no sense because of the missing information. We can infer that she's being punished for something, but it could also be that she's a drug user or something else happened. It could even be a punishment against Darien done to his mother, but it's never explained or hinted at, so it's not really clear. The best that we get is during Spencer and Darien's conversation, when Darien mentions that he came from nothing, which I took to mean that his family wasn't part of the plan, but that he in particular either has or was given power, but I could be wrong. At any rate, it just doesn't make any sense without some context. One of Spencer's clones goes to visit his grandmother as well, and that's when he spots that someone's watching her. This guy appears to be someone who's there to specifically watch over her, and he's using his magic to hide himself from the nurses, so when Spencer shouts that he can see him, the nurses think he's shouting at them. In the middle of this, Daquan makes his move only to find out this wasn't the real Spencer. The real Spencer was with Darien, and he begs Darien to unlock the door to Magic Jail so he can free Aaron, but Darien refuses because of his mother. Spencer then realizes that his plan may not work because people have so much to lose if it fails, and that's what the powers that be want. And then they make themselves known to Spencer. He figures he has 6 months, maybe less, to take down the Aegis. Issue 8 picks up 2 weeks later, with Spencer realizing that the hooded figure put a fear spell on him, which he's figured out how to counter, something he shouldn't be able to do. He writes to Aaron, basically setting things in motion, and also remembers this vision of the future he had when he was in jail, one that he could achieve if he's strong enough. In the meantime, he's being interrogated by Daquan, and honestly, this is one of the best scenes in the entire series, because Daquan totally has his number. He's basically trying to make Spencer slip, and he's so damn confident that you just buy that he has Spencer exactly where he wants him. He says, "Because this little bird told me you were recently exposed to a very powerful fear spell, one that would make it impossible for you to sit there with that smug fucking look wrapped around your face. Should at least be showing me a case of the shakes, but you ain't, and this wand says you haven't had any help avoiding that. Spencer, what are we going to do about you?" And then this happens. Hang them. Hang every last one of them, Nick. Really? Brandy Thomas. Carrie Randolph. Really? You've had months to come up with how to introduce the obvious evil white men running things, and this is how you chose to do it. This ridiculous scene. Look at the screen. This ridiculous scene with evil Colonel Sanders, Dick Cheney, Nazis, the KKK, Lyndon Johnson, and Donald Trump. Look at this shit. Look at this shit. It's unreal. and they've all got these red, white, and blue eyes. I thought it was a coloring mistake, but no, it's intentional. Every white dude, and they're all white dudes, have blue eyes with red highlights. That's not an accident. And then the ridiculousness of the dialogue makes this scene just tragic. Here's LBJ, this Dale kid. Well, you bring him in, and you make an example of him, right here in front of the rest of them. Doesn't matter who his damn daddy is anymore. Burn that goddamn agreement. Ain't no other choice left to you. Is it the worst dialogue ever? No. Is it bad? Yeah. And look, given the context, this is totally what evil racist white men, yes, I know that's an oxymoron, would say, but it still sounds ridiculous. This is the same thing that happens when you try to satirize SJWs. You could repeat things they say verbatim, and it would sound unrealistic because of how crazy it sounds. This is one of those situations where it would have been better to make them sound less openly racist so that people could take the scene seriously, because the tone doesn't match anything we've seen in the rest of the story. And that gets us to the real problem with this scene, because there is actually a worse thing than the insanity of having Donald Trump be this uber racist, and apparently the father of the guy currently running things. My guess is that this really isn't Trump, but that his father has taken the form of notable racist in history or something like that, but I could be wrong. No, the real problem is that the scene makes no sense. We go from Daquan interrogating Spencer to seeing the powers that be, and there's no reason to show it at this time. The scene is completely out of place narratively, structurally, and thematically. Narratively, we've never seen who runs things, so jumping to these people talking without any clue of who they are or what's going on doesn't work. If we'd seen these people before or had small glimpses of their conversations every issue, then it could work, but just barely. But the full reveal just doesn't fit here. And that's because structurally, you're killing the tension of the previous scene. Daquan has Spencer pegged. Why break the tension with a completely unrelated scene about a bunch of dudes with power bitching about Spencer? If it's supposed to be about their fear over Spencer breaking the fear spell, we need to know that this was supposed to be a big deal. The way that Daquan acts is like it's important that Spencer could break it, but not any worse than any of the other things he's done. And what makes that worse is that the story goes back to Spencer and Daquan, with them battling it out, and basically ending with Spencer realizing Daquan is probably on his side, but thinks Spencer will fail because he's dependent on others to help him, rather than him being the one to rally people behind him as the leader. And at the tail end of that, it cuts back to LBJ and generic white dude, with LBJ telling him to give the nigger something to keep him quiet, which I'm guessing is a reference to the Civil Rights Act. Then it goes back to Spencer and Daquan, with Spencer mentioning that he remembers his dad helping hide that Daquan's wife used magic. And so Daquan lets him go. Spencer contacts Aaron, and Aaron sets things into motion. That's an okay ending, but you can see how that one scene doesn't fit. If you've got the book, skip the scene. Just continue on with Daquan grilling Spencer. It totally works, which makes me think this was an added-in scene that wasn't supposed to be here. I'm not really sure why they would throw in this scene, but it really does feel out of place, and that's because thematically, this scene happens in the wrong place in the story. The entire point of keeping the powers that be a secret was for a big reveal. This was a surprise reveal, and a very weak one. Look, anybody who's read Excellence had to know white men were the villains. It's been painfully obvious since the beginning. But so far, it's been well handled by Brandon Thomas because he was building up to that moment where Spencer would learn the truth. And that's where this should have happened. It would have been a predictable but still powerful moment, not unlike when the Fourth grabbed Naruto's hand to stop him from pulling off the Kyuubi seal after Pain killed Hinata. You already knew Naruto was Minato's son, but having that reveal happen at that moment made it so powerful. Now, imagine that happening when Orochimaru asked Tsunade to heal his hands. That's how out of place this is. There's no reason to put this moment this early in the story. Even if the book is about to end, which is possible, this is still the wrong place for it. You need Spencer to be the lead into this reveal, kinda like Neo meeting the Architect. You can hint at the Architect, but you don't show him until Neo meets him. The story has been about people admitting what they knew all along, so just revealing it at random feels like a cheat and pretty damn lazy, and as we've seen throughout the series, Brandon Thomas is anything but a lazy writer. So why did this happen? Well, because Brandon Thomas and Carrie Randolph are Wakandans. They're full-on Black Lives Matter supporting Marxist progressives, so this was always going to happen. It was really just a question of whether their skill and talent would supersede their politics, and it was looking like they would. It really looked like they cared more about their characters and their story than the message, but apparently that changed during their time off, so we got what's basically a damn good story with one shitty scene. If you're trying to understand what this is like, it's like when rappers let Silk the Shocker guest star on songs. Song was fine until he came on, and now you'll never get that back. It's just tragic. Judging by Carrie's Black Lives Matter rant at the end of the issue and this propaganda piece from Image, I can't imagine it's going to get any better from here. And that's really a shame because, like Carrie says in his rant, excellence is actually good enough for an Eisner nod, which it hasn't gotten. Although it might now, but only the virtue signal, not because any of them actually read or support the book. This is a perfect example of how politics can ruin a good story. The story was already political, already touching on these topics, but instead of letting the story go where it should have gone, Brandon and Carrie decided to hammer home the political message and kill the tension in literally the best scene in the story so far. I've committed to the book this far, so I'm going to finish the series, but issue 8 will forever be the point where excellence fell from grace. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.